Over 900 career goals, 5 Ballon d'Ors, 5 Champions League titles, and countless records broken across England, Spain, Italy, and beyond. Cristiano Ronaldo didn't just succeed in football, he made it his own. He has scored in every way imaginable, from headers to free kicks, from long-range strikes to last-minute winners when it mattered most. He wasn't chasing records anymore. He was the record. But here's the strange part. When he first arrived at the top level, none of this was guaranteed. In fact, many people saw something very different. A talented winger who was full of tricks, full of potential, but nowhere near the finished product. So how does that player turn into the greatest goal scorer in football history? What changes? And more importantly, what drives someone to never stop improving, even after they have already reached the top? Well, to fully understand Ronaldo, you first have to understand the island that created him. Ronaldo was born on the Portuguese island of Madeira in 1985, long before the luxury homes, the sold-out stadiums, and the millions watching around the world. There was a small house, a family struggling to make ends meet, and a young boy who spent almost every waking moment with a football at his feet. His father, José Diniz Aveiro, worked as the kit man at a local football club, while his mother, Maria Dolores, worked long hours to support the family. Life wasn't easy. Money was tight. Dreams like becoming a professional footballer didn't really happen to boys from Madeira back then. But Ronaldo didn't seem to care what was realistic. From the moment he could kick a ball, football became an obsession. Friends would later remember that he hated losing more than anyone they'd ever met. If his team lost, he'd get angry. Sometimes he'd even cry. Not because he couldn't control his emotions, but because even as a child, second place simply wasn't enough. School never held his attention in the same way. His mind was somewhere else. Every lesson, every break, every walk home, football, it consumed him. Looking back, it's easy to see a future superstar, but at the time, nobody saw one. They saw a skinny kid with a strange obsession, a boy who believed he belonged on the biggest stages in the world, long before he'd ever seen one. At just 12 years old, Ronaldo made a decision that would change his life forever. He packed his bags, left his family behind, and travelled nearly 1,000 kilometres to Lisbon. He wasn't chasing fame. He was chasing the only dream he'd ever had, and it would be the hardest decision of his life. For the first time in his life, he was completely alone. His family was back in Madeira. His friends were gone. Everything familiar had been left behind. Many young players never make it through those first few months. The homesickness becomes too much, the pressure becomes too heavy, and the dream slowly fades away. For Ronaldo, it almost did. He later admitted there were nights when he cried because he missed home. He was just a child, but every time he thought about giving up, he remembered why he had come. Football wasn't just something he loved anymore. It was everything. At Sporting, coaches quickly realised they weren't looking at an ordinary academy player. His pace was frightening. His dribbling embarrassed defenders. His confidence bordered on arrogance. Some teammates even found him annoying, not because he wasn't talented, but because he genuinely believed he would become the best player in the world. Imagine saying that at 13 or 14 years old. Most people would laugh, and no doubt, some probably did. Cristiano Ronaldo didn't care. He wasn't trying to convince anyone. He was making a promise to himself. Then, at just 15 years old, everything nearly came to an end. Doctors discovered he had a racing heart, a condition that, if left untreated, could have ended his football career before it had even begun. He underwent surgery, and fortunately, it was successful. Within days, he was already asking when he could train again. That tells you everything you need to know about Cristiano Ronaldo. Most people would have been grateful simply to recover, but Ronaldo only cared about getting back out on the pitch. Months later, Sporting did something they had never done before. He played for the club's under-16s, and then the under-17s, then the under-18s, the B team, and finally the first team, all in the same season. No player in Sporting's great history had progressed that quickly. It was becoming impossible to ignore, but the moment that changed football forever was still to come. By the summer of 2003, Cristiano Ronaldo was no longer just Sporting Lisbon's brightest young talent, he was becoming one of the most exciting teenagers in Europe. But outside of Portugal, very few people knew his name. That was about to change. On the 6th of August, Sporting played Manchester United in the opening match of their brand new stadium. For most fans, it was just a pre-season friendly. For Cristiano Ronaldo, it was an audition, and he put on a performance that nobody in the stadium would forget. Every time he received the ball, he attacked. He wasn't interested in playing it safe. He ran at experienced Premier League defenders with the confidence of someone who had absolutely nothing to lose. Step-overs, explosive acceleration, fearless dribbling, again and again and again. United's defenders couldn't live with him. Future Premier League stars were being turned inside out by an 18-year-old they'd barely even heard of. By the final whistle, something extraordinary had happened. Manchester United's players weren't talking about the result, they were talking about one player. Years later, several teammates recalled urging Sir Alex Ferguson to sign him. They didn't want to face him again. They wanted him on their team, and Sir Alex didn't hesitate. The original plan had been to keep watching Ronaldo for another season, but after that performance, the plan changed overnight. Just days later, Cristiano Ronaldo became a Manchester United player. He inherited one of the biggest shirt numbers in football, the number 7, the shirt worn by club legends like George Best, Brian Robson, and David Beckham. Ronaldo didn't even want it at first, as he believed the number carried too much pressure. However, Sir Alex Ferguson insisted. He saw something in Ronaldo that few others could. Not the player he was, the player he could become. It was a huge vote of confidence, but it also came with enormous expectations. The tricks that had dazzled Portugal wouldn't be enough in England. The Premier League was faster, more physical, and far less forgiving. For the first time in his career, talent alone wasn't going to be enough. Cristiano Ronaldo would have to become something else. Not just gifted, not just exciting, he would have to become relentless. And that transformation would change football forever. When Ronaldo arrived at Manchester United in 2003, he was still a teenager, trying to find his place in one of the biggest clubs in the world. He had the talent, everyone could see that. But talent alone doesn't survive at Old Trafford, especially under Sir Alex Ferguson. Ferguson didn't just want skill, he wanted discipline, efficiency, and end product. At first, Ronaldo had too much of everything except that. He would beat a defender, then try to beat him again. He would perform a step over, then another, and another. It was exciting, the crowd loved it, but it wasn't effective. So Ferguson did something important. He didn't stop Ronaldo's creativity, he refined it. He told him to release the ball faster, to think faster, to become more direct. And slowly something began to change. Ronaldo started listening, not because he had to, because he wanted to improve. Day after day, he stayed behind after training. While others left the pitch, Ronaldo stayed. Practicing free kicks, rehearsing step-overs, repeating sprints, again and again and again. Teammates noticed something strange. He wasn't competing with opponents anymore. He was competing with time. One of his former teammates, Rio Ferdinand, later spoke about how Ronaldo's obsession stood out even among elite professionals. He didn't behave like someone who had already made it. He behaved like someone who still had everything to prove. And that mindset started to show on the pitch. Goals began to come. Confidence grew. The tricks were still there, but now they had purpose. At the same time, Ronaldo was physically changing. He was no longer the skinny teenager who arrived from Portugal. He was building muscle, and with that came speed, power, and explosiveness. Every season, he looked like a different player. But the most important change wasn't physical. It was mental, because somewhere along the way, Ronaldo stopped wanting to be good and started demanding to be the best. And that demand would soon push him beyond Manchester, to a place where his transformation would reach another level entirely. By 2009, Cristiano Ronaldo had achieved almost everything possible in English football. He had won the Premier League, the Champions League, and the Ballon d'Or. But for him, it still wasn't enough. So he made the biggest move of his career, Real Madrid. A world record transfer, a new country, a new pressure, and a new obsession. Because at Madrid, he wasn't just expected to be great, he was expected to define an era. And that's exactly what he did. At first, he was still adapting. Different league, different defenders, different expectations. But it didn't take long. Soon the goals started coming and they didn't stop. Powerful finishes, headers, free kicks, impossible angles. It didn't matter how you defended him. He found a way to score. Season after season, Ronaldo wasn't just scoring, he was rewriting what scoring meant. In Spain, he wasn't competing with defenders anymore, he was competing with history itself. Every season had to be better than the last, every record had to fall, and somehow he kept delivering. At the same time, the rivalry with Lionel Messi pushed both players to levels the sport had never seen before. Two players at their absolute peak, breaking records at the same time, redefining what world class even meant. But what made Ronaldo different wasn't just talent, it was repetition. He trained like someone who had never won anything, even after Ballon d'Ors, even after Champions Leagues, even after breaking records. He still stayed behind, still practiced, still pushed, still demanded more from himself than anyone else ever could. At Real Madrid, he didn't just become a great player, he became a goal-scoring machine, and by the time he left Spain and moved on to Italy, he wasn't chasing history anymore. He had become it. Ronaldo continues to impress from Juventus back to United, then away to Saudi Arabia. However, when people talk about Cristiano Ronaldo today, they often start with numbers, goals, trophies, records. But that misses the real story, because what made him different was never just what he achieved, it was what he was willing to do to achieve it. From a small island in Madeira to the biggest stadiums in the world, to the most intense rivalries football has ever seen, Cristiano Ronaldo never stopped pushing, even when he was the best, even when he was already a legend, even when there was nothing left to prove. He kept going. That is what separates him. Not just talent or luck, but obsession. People who played with him often describe the same thing. A refusal to switch off, a constant desire to improve, a mindset that treated every training session like a final, and every match like an opportunity to become better than the last version of himself. That mentality didn't just build a great player, it built a career that stretched across decades at the highest level of football. There is, of course, a debate in football that will never end, Messi or Ronaldo. But regardless of opinion, one truth remains undeniable. Nobody has ever worked harder to become what they became. Ronaldo didn't rely on talent alone. He didn't rely on potential. He didn't rely on being good enough. He built himself day after day, season after season, until greatness became normal. And in doing so, he changed what young footballers believe is possible, because if one skinny kid from Madeira could become the greatest goal scorer in football history, then maybe nothing is impossible. And maybe that's the real legacy of Cristiano Ronaldo. Not just the goals, not just the trophies, but the idea that through obsession alone, you can change your entire life. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe for more football stories like this. And let me know in the comments who should be next.